So welcome everybody to Flourish in Stressful Times. My name is Bud Wassell, coordinator of our employee and family resources. And as you may know, I do a lot of classes on mindfulness and stress and resilience and related kind of topics. And just as a quick intro, I came across this concept of flourishing through the app Healthy Minds, which I'll tell you more about that. We're going to be using throughout this whole course. And I'll explain the whole concept of flourishing and what it's about and how it differs a little bit from happiness and those kinds of things and just simple stress management. Because it really is more of a deeper, holistic, multi-dimensional kind of way to look at our well-being. My contact information is there. Feel free to let me know if you have any questions after the class or at any time. And I've got everybody on mute right now, but you can certainly use the chat feature. And I would encourage you, if you have any questions, to let me know as we go through this. My colleagues are listed there. Gail Cole is our supervisor of employee well-being programs. Vivian Burgle is my colleague in EFR, that's Employee and Family Resources. And Carly Smolik and Kristen Turnbull are new health coaches, and I'll tell you all about that. So as I mentioned, I am recording the session, so I'll be able to send out a recording link if you have to miss a class. This is the first of a 5-part series throughout the summer. You don't have to attend them all, but I would encourage you if you want to kind of get the full comprehensive look at flourishing. And you can always look at the recordings. Once you're on the list, I'll be sending them out to you as I do the different classes. These all qualify for Know Your Numbers credits. So each class qualifies as 1 credit of $100. And I think for the personal choice activities, for this, it's up to $200. So 2 classes of $100 each. And what you would do is you would put that into the personify. You have to do that for Know Your Numbers. And you once you do the other activities, you can put in personal choice activities. And all you have to do is list which EFR classes you've taken. It's kind of a self-attestation thing. So the other thing I'll mention is that, I'm covering a lot of ground here in a relatively brief period of time, 45 minutes. If you have to have lunch while you're listening, that's fine, but try not to multitask and do other emails and things like that. I think you'll get most out of it if you pay attention as we're doing this. And we will have a meditation practice in the middle of it. And I would encourage you to do some practices in between classes. That's the best way to get the full benefit out of all this, is to practice so that you're really retraining your mind and your body with these practices. In a sense, rewiring your mind and your brain. So let's get into some of the detail. Going forward, what does it mean to flourish? So when you signed up for this course, what did you think of? What came to your mind? What, maybe use the chat feature. I'd love to hear from you a word or two of what does this mean to flourish? Another way that I thought about it was to thrive. That is, the thrive is where we keep our information on our intranet, our well-being information. I'll point that out towards the end of the class. But again, I'd love to hear from you if you want to use the chat feature. What comes to mind for you when I bring up the word flourish? Kind of use this graphic image here of a flower sort of blooming, right? So that's one way to think of it. But yeah, here's one. Please feel free to add to this. To grow. Yep, very good. Any others? Thank you. It's starting to come in now. Improve and develop. Excellent. Grow well in your environment. So, and you might also think about what are some of the things that you're hoping to accomplish for yourself when you signed up for this class. What is your intention? What do you hope to get out of this? Here's some more good ones. Happy and satisfied, to cherish in your environment, have clarity. Very good. Like these. Keep them coming. I'll put up some what I would consider, say, synonyms to grow luxuriantly or thrive. To grow, thrive, prosper, develop. Some of you touched on some of those words. So that's kind of the idea here. What we're really doing is we're going beyond simply managing our stress. We're looking at ourselves in a holistic way. So the problem, though, is how do we do this in stressful times? And these are probably some of the most stressful times we've been through. You know, starting from the pandemic on, it just seems that our stress level has amped up quite a bit. And it's very, very challenging, especially in what you might call these times of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity in the world at large, in our families, in our workplace. It just kind of permeates everything that we do. And those kinds of things, and they've actually done research on this. This is from Dr. Amishi Jha, from her book, Peak Mind. She talks about this. All these things really make it very, very difficult to focus. And that's what her whole book is all about, is focusing and keeping our cool and being able to perform at a high level, even under high stress conditions. And they studied military, police officers, first responders, healthcare, and things like that. And one of the most, well, actually the most effective practice was mindfulness. And we're going to be using that sort of, to me, the vehicle or the fuel that helps us do all this stuff. And so it's part of the Healthy Minds app too, which you'll see. The other thing that kind of conspires against us is the negativity bias. And if you've been in my classes before, I've talked about this, but it's that evolutionarily that our brains have been hardwired to focus on the negative, be aware of what's out there in our environment so that we can successfully cope with it or deal with it. Or basically it's the fight or flight response, fight, flight, or freeze. You know, do we fight that threat? Do we flee from it? Or in some cases, we actually freeze. But our brains over many thousands of years have been hardwired this way. So even though it's helped us to adapt, our brains are still like that. And so all the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and all of the stressors that we face in our day-to-day lives, you know, it really makes it so difficult to keep focused. And it's kind of like we're simply treading water just to keep our heads above water. And so Flourish, this whole idea, is really much more about what can we do to kind of really learn how to not just tread water, even in difficult churning waters and turbulent times, but how can we learn to surf or swim or just stay on top of the water, to use that analogy. And it is different than seeking happiness. Now, what you might have noticed is there have been many, you know, there's podcasts and articles and social media. A lot of it focuses on what we can do to make ourselves happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong here. It's very important. And there's actually a whole science. There's a bunch of great podcasts out there, and they've studied this more and more, but flourishing kind of takes it a little bit further. So these key points here, you know, you can flourish even when you're not happy. And it kind of recognizes that we naturally have a spectrum of emotions and human experience, especially during these challenging times that we go through. So what if the pursuit of happiness isn't the answer to living a fulfilling life? Think about that. Not just be about being happy, but we can recognize that there are going to be ups and downs, right? And there's going to be things that really are challenging and in a sense make us stronger. So it's that idea of being resilient. And when we grow and we learn from those kinds of things, it makes us flourish. You know, it really strengthens us in a number of different ways. And it's also that last point there. Well-being is not about avoiding negative emotions, but about building the skills to navigate them. So one of the criticisms of simply seeking happiness is that it can sort of avoid or not acknowledge this idea that you can't avoid negative emotions. That's just the way the world is, and that's part of the human experience. But we can learn to acknowledge those ups and downs and those negative emotions that we have. We can learn coping mechanisms, but we can learn to even embrace them, and we can learn to do some things that can really help us navigate all that. Okay, so this is from Thich Nhat Hanh, the book "The Heart of the Buddhist Teaching," which is a great little book, by the way. And some of this stuff is based on Buddhist principles, although this is not a course in Buddhism. But if you've read any of Thich Nhat Hanh, he's recently deceased, but he's a Vietnamese, originally from Vietnam, Zen Buddhist teacher. Great, it's got terrific stuff, and this particular book is very good. But I love this quote. So when we have a toothache, we know that not having a toothache is happiness. But later, when we don't have a toothache, we don't treasure our non-toothache. Think about that. It's kind of like if you were to substitute stress for toothache or troubles, that kind of a thing. We don't really appreciate that when we're not in that stress mode. So what this is all about is, and practicing mindfulness helps us to appreciate the well-being that is already there, that we already have. So it's not like we have to create something new in this. But you might ask yourself, what nourishes joy in me? What kinds of activities, what kinds of things, what kind of relationships? What are the things that you do, might be at work or outside of work with your family, friends, or hobbies, those kinds of things? And what nourishes joy in others? Okay, so think about that for a moment, because that's going to be part of it, nourishing joy sort of in a way that transcends ourselves. All right, so did want to give you some more information on happiness, because again, this sort of is a ground. It's in the background. Let's put it that way. So last year there was a great special from the New York Times, which is their online newsletter. You can sign up for that if you're interested. It's really got some great stuff. And in their magazine, they did a special issue on happiness. So there's a link there, and I will send the slides out, as I mentioned, after the class. And there's a quiz, what makes you happy? So you might try that. But what's kind of interesting is they make the distinction between two kinds of happiness. One is I can't say it, so you can read it. Eudaimonic. I don't even know if that's correct. Eudaimonic well-being. And there's a link there if you want to read more about it, which you might think of as a deeper level of having meaning and purpose in your life. The other is hedonic well-being, which simply means feeling pleasure and avoiding pain. And sometimes we might have a balance between these two, and researchers know that it's important that we have both in order to thrive. So what you might look at is, here's just kind of an example of hedonic well-being. Might be thinking of eating a mind-blowing meal or something like that, or something really sweet, something you really like, or a funny social media post, or being in front of a fireplace while there's a snowstorm going on, something like that. That's hedonic well-being, feeling pleasure, avoiding pain. Eudaimonic, again, I'm having trouble with that word, sorry about that, refers to a deeper sense of meaning and purpose that can come from, say, maybe a feeling of mastery over challenging project or work that you do, volunteering in your community, or bonding, connecting with loved ones, learning a musical instrument, or a language that gives you that sense of purpose and well-being. So it's obviously deeper. And that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where that sort of overlaps into this whole field of flourishing. So what we're going to be doing in this class, today is really sort of an intro class to flourishing. And then there's 4 more parts after today. So there'll be all of them are on Tuesdays. I hope you signed up for all of them, although you don't have to. The next one is on July 1st, and the next one will be focusing on awareness. Then on July 15th, we'll be on connection. July 29th is insight. So those are all 2 weeks apart, as you can see. Then the 5th and final one is 3 weeks after that, because I happen to be away the second week in August. So on the 19th of August, we'll finish up with purpose, meaning and purpose. So what I need you to do is download the Healthy Minds app. I did include a link here, but if you just go to your app store, either one is fine, Android or iPhone. It is a free app. I think you'll see Healthy Minds program is the way it's listed. It has a lot of terrific stuff. I've been using it for a year or so now, and it's based on research. It's based on the Center for Healthy Minds, and it explores. The app is all about these 4 pillars of flourishing: awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. So we'll be using that, and I can only cover so much in the classes. So you'll be able to take a deep dive into all these areas. And what I really like about the app is that it breaks it down. So let me give you this quote. Dr. Richard Davidson is the founder of the Healthy Minds Institute, and he's the primary researcher. And this is his quote: "The Healthy Minds program app is not simply a mindfulness app. While it includes mindfulness, it is based on research that identifies these 4 pillars of well-being that each need to be trained to establish enduring flourishing. It is the only app that has chosen domains of well-being to cultivate based on modern scientific findings." And he is a researcher. This is all based on his and others' work. And with this part that I was referring to, this had short mini lessons or podcasts that provide the science associated with the practices. And then you get a practice right after that. So, and they're like 5-7 minutes. That's how quick they are. And then the practice can also be anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes or something. So easily digestible, quick practices that you can do throughout your day. And this harnesses 2 major modalities of learning that we know from neuroscience that are required to firmly induce enduring change. So what I'd like you to do is, when you download the app, you'll find there's a whole section called Foundations. So in the first part of it, it'll talk about the self-assessment. So I would encourage you to take that self-assessment. It's pretty quick. And then there's a section, then just explore it. But so there's a small lesson called Train the Mind, Rewire the Brain lesson. And here's a quote from Dr. Davidson again: "We found ways to treat and cure many diseases. We now live longer as a species. We're richer and more productive. But although our bodies," sorry, there's a mistype there. "Although our bodies are healthier, our minds are not." And we know that there's kind of a mental health crisis. Anxiety, depression, distraction, loneliness, lack of meaning and purpose are at an all-time high. And, if you're feeling some of this, I think we're all in this together. But here's the good news. With neuroplasticity, which simply means that our brains are constantly changing in response to our experience. So, in other words, the more we practice, the stronger that part of our brain gets. So if you practice positive things and you practice gratitude, those kinds of things, it strengthens those neural networks. But since there is so much negativity, and there is that VUCA, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity surrounding us, it's easy to focus on that. I mean, just turn on the news. If we get caught up in the news stream and the doom scrolling and all that comes across on our dumb phones, right? It's easy to get kind of really caught up in that negative spiraling kind of whitewater rapids. But with neuroplasticity, here's the best part. We can train our minds, we can take control of that, and we can be in the driver's seat. That's really what it is. And the further point, which is so important, is all it takes is brief practices, but it's the frequency of the practices that really help us to retrain the mind and rewire the brain. Okay, so you're going to find that this whole course is based on quick little practices, easy to do kinds of things. And so let me move into some of those. If you've been in my classes before, I've taught some of this, but basically quick, purposeful pauses. They can be really powerful, and they can take as quickly as 20 to 30 seconds or up to a minute or two or three. And all I really mean by these are ways to stop and step back from that which is stressing you out or that which you're kind of like wrapped up into, all the doing of the day, all the tasks, all those overwhelming things. Step back from that for a moment with a purposeful pause and just kind of psychologically change gears and reset, in a sense, reset, recharge, refresh the mind. Okay. And this can really make a difference. And I've talked about things like simple anchoring practices, and all this really means is kind of grounding yourself, getting out of the head and into the body. So you might just try this with me right now as you're sitting or standing. Just feel your feet on the ground. Feel that sense of connection and contact. And just feel that groundedness through your feet touching the ground, being connected to the earth. And in the same way, feel your body as it sits. Feel the weight of your body being supported by the chair. Feel those touch points. Feel your arms and your hands as they rest, doing whatever they're doing. Those are all grounding points. Even things like sound, you can hear sounds in the environment, or you can feel sensations, or breathing. I mean, that's really the next one. So we've talked a lot about breath work, and even simple deep breaths kinds of, and you've probably got your favorite kind of breathing, but there's lots of different types that I've covered in previous classes. But simple breathing can really make a difference. And we know that when we get stressed out and we have an emotional response to something, and we feel that fight or flight response, what does that do? Well, that gets us ready to meet the challenge. So in a sense, it's a good thing, but it also increases our heart rate. It does a whole number of things physiologically in the brain and in the body. And it really it makes us tense. It makes us, and we're actually not using the full brain. So doing some deep breathing can really make a difference. And when you do that deep breathing, take a few long, deep in breaths and then even longer out breaths. There's a couple of simple techniques that you can try. And we're going to do something, we're going to do a practice in a few minutes. We're going to do something that involves a specific way to breathe. It's sort of like called cyclic sighing. It's a two-part in-breath and then a long out-breath with the mouth open. But even doing these brief kind of practices can be simple ways to control what's going on so that we're not being as reactive, so that we train ourselves to be a little bit more mindful and in the present moment so that we can respond in a mindful way, in a calm, even-minded way. Okay? Makes sense? Hopefully it does. I'll pause in a minute. If you have any questions or comments, I'll pause in just a minute or two. But this is another way, informal mindfulness. The stop technique is simply what they sometimes call 1 minute breathing space. So the S is to stop and take stock. Just in other words, sort of notice how you're doing, what's going on in the moment. T take a deep mindful breath or 2 or 3. Okay. Just sort of breathing slower than usual, deeper, longer. O, observe. Observe what's going on internally. What thoughts are you having? What feelings are present? What's going on in the body? So those 3 areas. And then finally to P, proceed. So that can be done a little bit longer, or you can keep it brief. So that's a great little technique. And then there's everyday mindfulness, which is all these routine activities that we do. And I often use hand washing as an example, but there's lots of different things we do during the day from the moment we get up until we go to bed that are routine activities that usually when we're doing them, because we don't have to concentrate or focus on them, usually our mind is still working and analyzing and evaluating, and it's still kind of like stressing us out in ways. So all this really is to pay attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. So when you're washing your hands, simply wash your hands. Pay attention to all of the sensory experience of washing your hands. Okay? What does the soap feel like? What does the water feel like? What's the temperature? The sound of it. What's it like when you rinse off and then dry off? Now your mind is going to wander. It's you're going to try to. It's still kind of in the background doing stuff. It's going to pull your attention, but that's part of the practice is refocusing. So coming back to finishing the hands as you wash. So, and try that with a number of different activities that really can be so helpful. Now, this is another thing that you can kind of as a way to conceptualize it, the healthy mind platter. And these are different ways, much like the healthy food platter. We need all these things for good brain fitness. Okay, we need good sleep, starting from the upper left, going around clockwise. We need physical activity. There's been lots of studies that show that physical fitness helps our brain, helps our longevity, not just in the body, but also in our nervous system. We need focus time. So focusing on things that we like, getting a project done, or focusing on, playing music or hobbies or whatever it might be. Connecting time, of course, is super important. Quality of our relationships. Playtime might involve a few of those things, but just having time just for simple, fun, pleasurable kinds of things. That's that hedonic kind of happiness that I was talking about. And then simple downtime. Downtime could be just vegging out, doing nothing. The last one is time in, and that's our mindfulness practice. That's meditation or prayer or silence, just reflecting internally what's going on. You need all 7 to really have a healthy mind. So you might ask yourself, what's 1 or 2 areas that I could strengthen? And this will help with our Flourish practice. All right. So moving on, these are key dimensions. These are all taken from this great article on our Carol on Wellbeing site. So we have psychological flourishing, emotional flourishing, social, and contemplative. Our class is really going to be about that 4th dimension, contemplative, and it will follow those 4 pillars. But I just kind of wanted to give you this background so that you could sort of see some other kinds of things that you might read about or think about it in this way. So psychological flourishing has a lot to do with self-acceptance and self-actualization and that meaning and purpose kind of activity. It really connects us to something bigger, and it helps us to be psychologically flexible so that we're not stuck into some rigid patterns of thinking. Then there's emotional flourishing. So you might think of this as emotional intelligence in a sense. So being aware of our own emotions, being able to label them, being able to monitor them and regulate them, even in the face of some of those big stressors. And then also being aware of others' emotional states and being able to empathize with them, right? So that's an important, obviously, and as we know, as I mentioned, that social connection that moves us into the next one is another key ingredient into all this. So shared activities, being present in conversations, the power of belonging. And we know there's been lots of studies, and we're actually going to have a whole class on this. That's the connection class. But one of the studies I'll mention is one of the longest studies ever done about well-being and longevity, and it was done at Harvard. It started way back in like the 1930s and is still going on. And it's followed a group of men who attended Harvard, but then they also added in other folks that they had a better cross section of folks. And what it found is the single most important ingredient to our living a long, meaningful life is the quality of our social connections. Okay, it's not so much the quantity. These days, it's easy to have through social media and so forth, but it's important to have good quality relationships. All right, so we'll certainly explore that a lot more in that particular class. But for the contemplative well-being, this is sort of kind of summarizes it. How do you incorporate some of these things into daily life? Well, I think you'll be learning this in the class. It's really covered, and I hope you're going to be getting some good practices through the app and through the class. But you'll see that it will strengthen your focus. So the more we practice some of these kinds of ways of meditating and practicing through the app, it's going to help with your focus, but it's also going to expand your awareness so that you're aware of the bigger picture. And there's some practices that they call more open awareness. So instead of being just focused and fixated on what's right in front of you in the present moment, which is important, we're also going to be focusing on, what's around us and other people and the world around us. So you're able to kind of be aware of both. And then that third point, seeking out moments of awe. And this we know through our gratitude practices, but awe has also been studied. And so whether through nature, art, or other experiences, finding a sense of wonder and connection to something greater than ourselves can really be important to that sense of flourishing. And again, this is all from, there's the link. So when you get the slides, you might want to read further about some of this. All right, here's the point where I'm going to pause before we go into the practice. Let me just pause. I tend to cover a lot of ground in the intro, but do you have any questions or comments? Where are we at before we go into the practice? What's on your mind? Anything? Any questions that you might have? So, yep. So came to know about the book Peak Mind. That's the name of the book that I referenced before. That's the title, Peak Mind by Mishi Jha. Yeah, it's a great book. It's got a lot of good practices. That's the book that I was talking about before. The other one was by Thich Nhat Hanh, and you'll see it in the slides. It's called The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. And so those are the two I believe that I referenced. But any other questions or comments or anything so far? Is this making sense? Hopefully it is. Okay, well, let's forge ahead. When you get the slide, you'll see this link to nature videos. That goes to my YouTube channel. And so I have a bunch of brief nature videos. Those can even be kind of interesting to look at. All right, so let's do this practice. I put together a practice that sort of incorporates the 4 pillars. And let's see what our time frame is like. I've got 12:35. So we're going to try to finish by 12:45, but honestly, I'll probably run a little bit over. So if you have to leave, I understand, but I'll definitely finish by 12:50. And so I want to get this practice in. So the practice includes awareness, insight, connection, and purpose. So just find a comfortable position. just take a moment to readjust your posture so that you can relax the body and the mind a bit, closing the eyes, or if you prefer, you can keep them slightly open with a soft gaze down in front of you. And just feel into your body. Allow yourself to be connected and grounded like we talked about before, sensing your feet on the floor, body in the chair, being supported by the chair. You might feel the shoulders and arms resting. You might take a few deep breaths, and as you do, relax the shoulders, relax any other areas where there might be a little tension, maybe around the jaw or the back or wherever. And bring a smile, bring a half smile of kindness to your face. And just feel its warmth and friendliness. It actually sends a signal to the nervous system to relax when you do that. Just a slight smile, that's all it takes. And just feel your breath. Just be aware of your breathing in and out. Just that general sense of rising and falling as you breathe, one breath at a time. Feel the in breath, feel the out breath. In and out. And if your mind travels away and if you find yourself being distracted, that's where the awareness comes in. Just notice that happening. It's not a bad thing. We can't stop our mind from thinking. But if you notice that your attention has sort of been hijacked and you're thinking about something else, that's fine. Noticing that and being aware of that is part of the practice. And you just simply return your attention back to the next breath. Now we're going to do a couple of that cyclic sign breathing. So 2-part in breath. So breathe in halfway, filling the belly. Breathe in all the way, filling up to the chest, all the way up to the collarbone. Pause, and then breathe out with a sigh. Open mouth with a sigh. Let out all the tension and stress as you do that. Do that a couple more times. 2-part in breath. Open mouth, sigh it out, long and slow. Feel that sense of settling and relaxing. One more time. And again, being aware of what this feels like. That's the awareness part. Being aware of how it feels in the mind and the body. And then just follow the breath. Just let the breath resume to its natural rhythm. Just keep breathing and feel the sensations of each breath. Now, when thoughts pop up, which they will, just notice them. You don't have to come back to the breath now. I want you to be curious about what thoughts are present. Just let them come and go, but without getting caught up by a particular thought. See if you can just step back from them and observe thoughts come and go. They're just simply mental events. And some thoughts are stronger and more compelling, and they do hijack our attention. And if that happens, that's okay. And you might even get lost in a chain of thoughts. That's okay. If that happens, just simply let go of that as you notice it and come back. And just be aware of maybe the types of thoughts that are going on. And even if some of your thinking brings up a stressful situation, that's okay too, because that can trigger, just notice what it triggers. It might trigger a swirl of other thoughts or emotions or assumptions. And just observe what your mind does. You can even intentionally choose something stressful if you want. Nothing big, just moderate. Just notice it. What happens to your thoughts, your feelings, what happens in your body. Don't judge it, just notice. And if there is a judgment or opinion that comes up, just notice it, let it go. Sort of like a cloud passing through an open sky. And as we're aware of the stress, just see if you notice where you feel it in the body. Sometimes we feel it as energy or tension or warmth in the chest or the shoulders or tightness or tension in the jaw. Just notice it. You might even notice repetitive thoughts. Sometimes we think things to ourselves, I don't like this, or, oh, this is happening again. Why is this happening to me? Stuff like that. Just see if you can realize and welcome the stress and recognize that this is a safe place to be thinking about it. And it's a response to something that you care about. Why does it matter to you? Why is this thing that's stressing you important to you? And as you reflect on the stress, keep noticing the breath, keep that breathing nice and steady. It's a good way to kind of re-stabilize and refocus, re-relax. You might be aware of other people who were involved, other people in your life who helped you with that stress, or people that you turn to for support or advice. And so you might take a moment to appreciate and be grateful to the people in your life who are supportive and care for you. Take a moment to reflect on that. This could even be a pet. Continuing to breathe, just feeling that sense of appreciation and gratitude. Very good. Let's take another breath. Feeling the breath. And for the last part of the practice, take a moment to recall a time when you felt inspired or passionate. Something where you had a sense of meaning or purpose. What comes up? What comes to mind? Now, this doesn't have to be a big event or achievement. Just something where you felt engaged and inspired, connected with somebody perhaps, doing something important, taking care of yourself or others. In moments of inspiration, when we are engaged and passionate, it's because we're doing something we particularly care about and can connect us with a deeper purpose or calling. So whatever you notice here is okay. We're just experimenting here. We're just starting with this, right? Just notice what comes up. All right, very good. So before we wrap up, let go of that reflection and again, reconnect with your breath. No need to change your breathing, but you can take a deep breath if you like and simply notice how it feels to breathe. Purpose can feel pretty abstract at times, and this kind of practice helps us just get in touch with it. So we'll do more of this, especially in that one class. But as we come to a close, maybe making an intention to bring this quality of awareness or the insights about stress or the gratitude as we move on to the rest of our day. Slowly opening the eyes, maybe stretching a bit as we finish, moving the body. And I thank you for practicing with me and for taking time to do that. I know we're right about at the 12:45 mark. If you have to go, I understand, but I'm going to take a few more minutes just for some slides and I will send these out later. Any questions or comments about that experience? Thank you. I see some nice comments. helpful, inspirational, or relief. Very good. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you all for those. Thanks. Was feeling overwhelmed, energized now. See, that's a great turnabout. That's a nice way to think about it. Hopefully that's what some of these practices can do. Okay, great. Excellent. Oh, great. These are good. Thank you for those. But let me move on because I have a few more slides. Here's what I'd like you to do. The next class is in 2 weeks. You have 2 weeks to do these. Download that Healthy Minds app. Again, it's free. Complete the foundation section. You'll see it right in the beginning. That includes the Healthy Minds self-assessment. All of those, there's only about, I think, 5 different sections. It only take less than 30 minutes. And then try either the sitting activation or the sitting meditation. But the other one that's really kind of cool about this app is that it has an alternative, active meditations. So you can choose as you go through the practices, whether it's a sitting, passive sort of meditation or active meditation. And he'll explain, you can do these things as you're doing something else, not anything that requires a lot of focus, but maybe doing, again, like doing some routine activity. You could be doing them while you're taking a walk or, just simple little things around the house or those kinds of things. But that's what's kind of different about it. Now, I know some of you have been in my classes before. Some of this first part is pretty basic. So if you want to move on to the next section, which is awareness, feel free to go ahead into that and try some of those practices as well. Just as a reminder about the program itself, our EFR program. Thank you for these. See a couple more comments coming in. I will be sharing the slides. I'm going to send them to everybody I have on the LMS list that I got. So if you didn't sign up on LMS, that's fine. Just let me know and I'll make sure you get the slides and the recording link as well. So just again, there is an app for Carillon, which is our outside EFR vendor. You can download that. You search on the App Store for Carillon BH, which stands for behavioral health. And that has everything. I've got a whole page of meditations on there. So that I've recorded and uploaded to that. We do a number of other things, which I think a lot of you know about: webinars on request, stress breaks, monthly mindfulness. So if you're not part of that, you can sign up for that on LMS also. And we have changed one thing. This is new. Our Take 10 phone meditations, we used to have a call-in 800 number, and that has been discontinued. So now we're continuing on Teams. And if you're not on that and you want to be on that, let me know. Just send me an email or you can put it in the chat and I'll send you the Teams invite. That happens 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are at noon. Tuesday and Thursdays at 2. Okay, and then there is an app also that has meditations specifically, not to confuse you, but this is a totally different app than the one for the course, but it is there if you want to try it. The one for the course is the Healthy Minds app. The last thing I'll tell you about is the Thrive Health Coaching. This is new, so this is also something you can use for the Know Your Numbers activities. If you participate in health coaching and you want to reach out to get some one-to-one health coaching for any of these areas, as you see here, just email thrivehealthcoaching@ynhh.org. And those are the 2 health coaches, Kristen Turnbull and Carly Smolik, who are the folks that would be giving you that service. But those also qualify for the Know Your Numbers. This is where you find all our information on Thrive. You go to the departments and communities on the intranet. T takes you, you'll see Thrive. And then our stuff is under My Wellbeing. I'm also going to post all this under the page called Live and Recorded Resources. And with that, I'm going to say thank you so much and really appreciate you coming. Again, I will be sending out the slides if you're on that list. If you're not, let me know. And I hope to see you at our second class, which will be July 1st. It's a Tuesday again from 12 to 12:45, or really 12:50. Can't seem to fit it into 45 minutes. But yeah, thanks for being here. Really do appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording and see if you have any questions. So do that now. And again, thank you. We have a great rest of your day.